live session, and eventually you help them to navigate through this corporate things. And, it was quite interesting. Get to know a lot of communities around the world.
So what's your dream and your aspiration?
My dream is actually to make money from that.
Kevin is very realistic, so the first thing he focuses is on money. Let's hear from Jason.
Hello, my name is Jason. So I'm the CEO of a small blockchain consultancy firm. Still small, still growing. It's in the third year already. Not too bad, good friends and partners like me and also Kevin here. Fun fact, I like to change the hard shift, career shift every 10 decades. So I spent 10 years as a banker, slowly calling up the ranks. Then 10 years as a magazine writer and eventually managing editor, also slowly calling up the ranks. And now the next 10 years doing blockchain. Now on top, I'm not making a lot of money. So it's a growing industry, I think it will grow soon. Its aspiration is to not have to work a day in my life anymore. I can hang out with friends and have something else and I think. Going on aspiration.
Thank you, Jason. So Jason changed job every 10 years. So 10 years later, you'll ask what job he is doing. Yeah. So next, the gentleman here.
Hi, I'm Carlson. My job is I'm the group risk and compliance guy. So risk management and doing compliance. I'm the guy to approach that. So one fact about myself is I actually love playing computer games. I love streaming and earning money from it and spreading the fun of playing games. That's what I love to do. And one dream and aspiration of me is I would like to, quite similarly to what you want, for me it's opening a hotel at a private island.
Okay. Thank you. Next.
Hi, I'm Aina. Full name being Aina Sophia, job description, I am with the operations department doing compliance. One fun fact, I like to crochet and knit. So my dream is, it's not a dream, it's more like a small goal, is to make an article of clothing for each member of my family, and then maybe start selling, I don't know, selling clothes, I don't know.
Not for your colleagues. So, my mom used to crochet, so nowadays she actually makes soft toys by crochet for her grandchildren. So she makes one soft toy every day. So she started taking all the Pokemon's character. So she starts with Pikachu, then she move on and she move on. Yeah, that keeps her busy. So next, can we have?
Hi, my name is Nawa. I'm managing for legal and compliance. One fun fact, not really fun fact, is I'm a cat lover, so anything about cat will interest me. But eventually, when I have a daughter, I stop having any cats. My dream, I think a normal one, just want to have a lot of money, maybe own a Tesla car.
Oh, Tesla. A bit is part of his dream as well. Okay, Gary, we would like to hear from you.
Yeah. So my name is Gary. Some of you know. I am IT. I am in the IT department here. One fun fact about myself. I don't think a lot of you, or actually none of you know that I can actually wiggle my ears. Yeah. And one dream of mine is that I want to be in the music industry full time. Yeah. Thank you.
Nice.
Okay. Thank you for everyone. So every time when you wave goodbye to Gary and you see his hand doesn't move, you look at his ears. So he could be waving to you from his ears. Yeah. So I thought that was a very cool thing that you can do. I can't wiggle my ear. So let's move on. Let's move on to the content. So what we learned today is this field. One, what are the provisions under the Anti-Money Laundering, Anti-Terrorism Financing and Proceeds of Unlawful Activity? We call it AMLA. AMLA stands for Anti-Money Laundering Act, but actually the title is longer than that. So what's the purpose behind AMLA, the policies of it, and the principles behind it, the money laundering cycle? For us to effectively understand how AMLA protects us and what we have to do to comply with AMLA, we have got to understand what's the reason behind it, what's the policy behind it. Okay, money laundering cycle, how people who are dealing with this illicit money, they use the system and they manipulate the system, and how they actually turn what we deem as illicit money to become money that's usable in this ecosystem. Remedies that's provided by law. We also talk about risk management, so I think a lot of you are actually interested in risk management, customer due diligence and digital verification. So these are the few. This is also the same topic that I've done for Amanah Raya Berhad on Tuesday. So Amanah Raya Berhad is a 7-hour course. It's actually a little bit more extensive than this. Ours is a 4-hour, so I actually cut it short. It's an accredited course by HRD. So they have to learn this as well. Yeah. So what we'll do is, let's look at the course objective. So the course objective is just to provide you a basic understanding of AMLA, AML and CFT framework in Malaysia, and what are the prescribed steps that can be taken. And we are looking at actually mitigation steps to actually prevent these illicit activities. Okay? And what are the learning outcomes? So at the end of this course, participants will gain an overview of the policy, principle and the general framework of AMLA 2001. Participants will also be able to implement practices and procedures that can detect and mitigate possible incidences of money laundering and terrorism financing. Right? So this is just for you to know what time you can have your break. And I personally felt that the 2 hours break is actually quite long. So if you actually feel that you want to cut short, I'm more than able to accommodate. Right? So let's move on. We'll deal with that later. So for those who are in the legal industry, we all understand what Act 613 means. Kevin, would you like to tell people why we always see an Act 613, Act 54, Act 50, Act 1?
I think it's Parliament.
Parliament, yeah. This is when a piece of legislation is approved by Parliament. Okay, so Act 1 is the very first law that is approved. So the very first law that is approved is actually a general framework that actually helps us govern the entire nation. So Act 1 is the supreme law of the land. What would be the supreme law of the land? Yes, Federal Constitution. So Federal Constitution is the first law that we have because they have to set up every framework, even the framework to recognize the law, a framework to recognize what institutions that we're in. Okay? So this law of Malaysia, every time when you see this is the official Act of Parliament that's gazetted, you always have the date of Royal Assent. Royal Assent is when the entire legislative process is completed. Okay? But it will only be effective after Gazette. So you will also have an effective date. Okay? So you will have a Gazette date and you have an effective date. So anything that passes Royal Assent but is not gazetted will not be enforced. Yeah? It will not have the force of law. Right? So let's move on. Okay? Before we actually look at this, how many of you have seen money laundering in action? In the most inconspicuous manner that happens before your eyes. Money laundering is something that is part of the economy. Well, it's not right, but it happens. We see it very often. Nowadays, it's more discreet. In the past, it used to be quite rampant. Have you seen it? And if you have seen it, in what manner and what form? I'll tell you a personal experience of mine. I'm sure some of you have seen it, but you do not identify it as part of money laundering. Okay? Money laundering, it can be part and it can be the entire act itself. Okay? So, illegal money lending, would that be money laundering? Yeah, so that's actually part of something that is an offense, okay? And usually the interest charge is very high. Have you seen every time on the 25th of every month? 25th is actually the payday for government servants. And on the 1st of every month, there's actually a payday for the private sector. You will see one guy has a sling bag, usually it's a leather sling bag. He'll go to the ATM, and you stand at the ATM, and if you're lined up behind him, you're queued behind him, you'll be waiting for 20 minutes, half an hour. Why? Because he has a stack of ATM cards. And this stack of ATM card is used to make withdrawal. Make withdrawal on the very first day and you do that early in the morning. You do that at maybe 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock in the morning, because he doesn't want you to withdraw the money out. Okay? He wants to be the first to make the withdrawal. So you'll be standing there making a withdrawal from everyone according to what they have agreed. Maybe 1,000 or maybe 2,000, you withdraw from your account. Okay? So you'll be standing and withdrawing from the stack. So those are actually hints of money lending activity, because it's impossible a single person has got so many ATM cards with the same bank. Okay? So that is a money lending activity. Any other instances where you can actually sense or sniff out money laundering?
The seller that prefer the cash, let's say restaurant, right? They prefer the cash instead of using the paywave or
Yeah, true. But sometimes it's just maybe because they have a lot of cash, they themselves, they want cash partly because, I know this because some people is involved in it. It's because they have Yama workers. So Yama workers, it doesn't come on record for payment of money laundering. They would want to deal with cash. Okay? Why? Because cash is actually fungible. The meaning of fungible is 1 ringgit in your head is the same as 1 ringgit in my hand. I'm not able to trace who owns it. The trail stops. Okay? So that's the problem with currency. But nowadays, if I want to make money laundering a little bit more sophisticated, I will not be dealing with cash. I will just integrate myself into the financial system. I will deal with loans. I will deal with money from banks. Okay? That way, I reduce significantly the chance of me being discovered. Yeah? So, I'll talk about this further. Okay? Now, we see a lot of businesses that deals with cash, and we see businesses that has got high volume of transaction. And most of the time, this high volume of transaction, they are also small transactions. Because if you're talking about high volume of transactions, you also need to make it small. Because if it's big volume, let's say for instance, I go to a Proton car showroom and I want to buy X70, okay? That's a big volume, okay? And it's easily traceable. The person who purchased it, okay? And good actually changes hands. So if you're talking about something like that, it's actually harder to launder money. So if I want to launder money, I will try to open maybe 20 burger stalls, okay? I try to open a hardware shop, okay? I try to open things where pricing can be a little bit subjective, okay? And what better way to launder money than through casinos? Okay, some of our Malay friends here, you may not know how casino works, but for someone who has frequented casinos, let me tell you how casino works, okay? Our money, if you win from casino or you win from Toto, are those legal money? Yes, provided it is from licensed gaming companies or licensed casino. So if you actually win 70,000 from, let's say you win 2 million from betting tomorrow, you can take that 2 million straight away purchase a bungalow. And if the IRS or LHDA comes to you, you can prove. Why? You have a receipt. Okay, you have a receipt. Now, every money, every amount that I cash out from betting, I used to be able to get a receipt. Okay, but of course the receipt has to be above a certain amount. You can't tell Genting to issue a 50 ringgit receipt. They won't be bothered with that. Okay, now let's say you win 50,000. You have 50,000. You go to casino and you say, give me a receipt. Why? Because if RRS questions me where I get my 50,000, I'll be able to show. Okay, now in the past, what people have done is, if I've got 70,000 to launder, I've got 100,000 to launder, I'll bring cash up to the thing. And in the thing, what I'll do is, I will feed the money into the system. And then, what I do is, even without gambling, I'll withdraw. And I'll go to the casino and say, I'm withdrawing out 70,000. Okay, I want this money, can you give me a receipt? Okay, in the past, Genting actually doesn't mind. Why? As long as you're there, you put money in their system, the chances are you might gamble. That's all they want. They want a chance for you to gamble. Okay? But what the government has come up to realize is a lot of people are using this loophole to get the receipt. Okay? So it's a very quick way to launder money. And it's a very safe way. So we got to control casinos. So if I'm allowing you to do that, I'm allowing you to turn illicit money into legal money. And that's wrong. So what I do is, I tighten the noose on the casinos. And these casinos now, I've got to ask you, if you want to cash out 70,000 or 80,000, show me how you want it. Okay? So now you see, casinos are dealing lesser with cash. And even if they deal with cash, they want a trail. They give you a card. So that's how much they know how much you have deposited and how much you withdraw. So if you deposited 100,000 and you withdraw 100,000, I'm not going to give you a receipt. But if you deposited 100,000 and you withdraw out 170,000, I'm going to give you a receipt for 70,000. Actually, how much you want. If I'm doubtful that that is the money you want, okay, I will check the machine because the machine has the record. If I can't check the machine, it's on the table, I will check the CCTV. You tell me you actually want, I'm going to observe where you want it. Okay, so the noose is actually tighter now. Okay, people can no longer do that. Now, remember I asked you, what other instances of money laundering have you seen? Okay, how many of you are aware of how much money you can withdraw from Toto or from Magnum? You always see these individual gaming houses. So you have got Toto, you have got Magnum. How much money can you withdraw out cash from this institution? If I walk into a gaming shop and I say I've got a winning ticket, okay? If my winning ticket is 60,000, I can withdraw cash. Then, okay? And I will have a receipt. But if it's any amount bigger than 60,000, I go to the HQ. Now, have you ever seen people waiting at the HQ? You have not. In the past, today I think they actually clamped down, they stopped it. In the past, people used to queue or wait at the bottom of Magnum or at the bottom of Sports Toto. What's the purpose of them doing that? Kevin, if you walk over to HQ for Magnum, what is the likelihood of you doing something? What would likely be the reason you were there?
To withdraw amount more than 60K.
Yeah, above 60K. You would have a winning ticket. Okay? So Kevin would have a winning ticket. Kevin would walk to Magnum, and I would be the person who is scouting for people with winning tickets. So I offer, hey Kevin, you're here. Do you have a winning ticket? You have a winning ticket? Okay. How much? Ada. Yeah, ada. Berapa? So Kevin will say 200,000. 200,000. Okay. I buy out the ticket from you. Why? Because now I'm going to transfer my illicit money to Kevin. Kevin is going to pass me a ticket to turn my illegal money to legal money. So that 200,000 is soon going to be legal. But Kevin is going to say, why do I want to take risks with you? Now my money is legal. I'm going to get illegal money. Why? Okay, so I will give him a sweetener. So what would be the sweetener? The sweetener will be, let me top up 20% for you. 200,000, I give you 240,000. Okay? To make sure you don't cheat me, you don't sell me a fake ticket. Okay? I'll take your ticket. You wait here. I give you half of the amount cash. So on the spot, I'll give you cash. Okay? I'll take this amount, I'll go up, I'll cash out in my name. Okay? In my name. So I've got a receipt for 200,000. If I'm being questioned by RIS, I will say, here, it's legal. repay gaming tax. Okay? I'll come down, and if it's proper, I'll pay carry the remainder. And if I can't leave until I pay carry the remainder. So that's how it works. So in the past, people used to purchase all these winning tickets. And all these winning tickets are paid with a premium to it. And the premium is usually 20%. Okay? But of course, they can negotiate, they can say 10%. Okay? To you, the risk that you take, if you agree to it. But if you're not a frequent money launderer, you will agree to it. Why? You can easily just run out, you can easily just use cash all the time. Okay? So if you're not a frequent money launderer, where you're not under the surveillance, to get 40,000 extra or 200,000 winning ticket, that's actually quite substantial. Right? So that is how another way money can be laundered. Yeah? So we always see that a lot. And we see that a lot, especially in areas like certain areas that I neglect. Okay? I'll tell you more money laundering activities which are a little bit more sophisticated. Okay? Now, so certain types of business are easier to launder compared to others. So, like earlier, what they said is, when we think of money laundering, we think of laundry. Okay? So the laundromat is actually one of the businesses. Car wash is another business. Okay? But have you heard of this thing called unique customers? What are unique customers compared to just general customers? What are the unique customers? I've got 50,000 unique customers. I've got 10,000 unique customers. Okay? So what's the difference? If I've got 50,000 transactions, does that translate to unique customers? What if my 50,000 transactions were generated by only 100 people? 100 different people are your unique customers. Okay? So the bigger unique customers, the wider the field, the safer it is for you when you launder. Okay? Because the unique customer, if you're laundering, it becomes harder to achieve. Okay? So if your money comes from different individuals, likely you're running a legit business. If it comes from the same individual, but what you do is you crank up the transaction, the number of transactions, in all likelihood, you're laundering. Okay? Now, let's move on. Okay, so what is money laundering? Money laundering is actually disguising illicit funds as legitimate. Okay? So, like what they say, although this is a cartoon, and it shows you washing, so visually it's quite correct. Something that is dirty, you wash, it becomes clean. Okay? But the trick is this, to only wash one at a time. If you do far too many, it's going to alert. Okay? And you do something that is out from the ordinary, it's going to alert. Okay? So the whole idea is, let's do it small, frequent, but regular. Okay? So now, let's look at AMLA. AMLA has a purpose. And the purpose of AMLA is to uncover efforts to disguise illicit funds as legitimate. Let's look into how AMLA works, or how generally, how criminal sanction works, or criminal efforts, efforts to curb criminal activity, how it works. For those who are legally educated, like me, and some of our friends here, we all know that if you want to charge someone and you want to successfully convict someone for a criminal activity, it is actually different from a civil activity. A civil wrong, the standard is only, what's the standard for a civil wrong? Can someone tell me? What's the standard you need to achieve? On a balance. So what is a balance? How do you describe a balance in terms of figures? When we talk about balance of probabilities. So can I say it's 50% plus 1? It's not 51%, it's 50% plus 1. That means it just needs to tilt the balance. I believe you more than I believe another person. That's good enough for you to win the case. Okay? That's civil. Okay? So civil is actually a little bit easier to achieve. Now, let's talk about criminal. Criminal is how much? It's beyond reasonable doubt. So there needs to be a doubt, and that doubt needs to be reasonable. So if you can throw something in to actually make it say it's possible, anything that is possible, it becomes a reasonable doubt. So the moment something becomes a reasonable doubt, imagine if you are the prosecution, you're trying to build you're trying to build a house of cards. Okay? All the other person needs to do is just remove one card, the whole deck will fall. Okay? So it's actually quite difficult for a successful AMLA prosecution. So probably if I need to put a figure to it, I would say it's somewhere around 98 or 99%. Okay? If I can give you the statistics of how successful criminal prosecution is, a lot of you are familiar with Common Gaming Housing Act. Okay, so that means it's actually to catch people who gamble. Let's say if I do an illegal 4D, so I'll be caught under this particular provision. And let's just look at claimable. Okay, let's not talk about those people who pleaded guilty, because those people who pleaded guilty, they don't have to go to trial. Let's talk about those people who actually take trial, they go to trial. What is the percentage of successful prosecution? Blank. The answer is none. That's how difficult it is. Okay? Why? Because gambling is something that is very technical. So the whole idea behind gambling is a game of chance. Okay? How do I prove something is a game of chance? I got to bet. And if I lose, I can't prove it's a game of chance. But if I win, I get to prove it's a game of chance. Now, let me give you another scenario. Since I say gambling is so difficult to prove. If you go to Giant, you purchase something, they give you a raffle ticket. And based on the raffle ticket, you go out, you get to spin a wheel. And then wherever the wheel lands on, you get the gift, the prize. Isn't that gambling? You're purchasing a chance. Right? And just like how we used to do, what you do in betting, what you do in sports toto, you're buying something with the view of getting a chance. Okay? But of course in Giant or in Tesco, or today what you call it, Lotus, yeah? You actually say, I purchased something for this chance. Okay? But I didn't top up anything extra. So there's always the argument, I didn't top up anything extra. I'm purchasing the same toilet roll, I'm purchasing the same hand wash, I didn't top up anything extra for the same chance. Okay? So it's just like a royalty book, right? So that's the argument. Have you noticed nowadays, there is no longer Wheel of Fortune, there's no longer spin the wheel, right? I used to work for Giant, okay? And at one time, we offered a culture, and it says you spend 200 above to get a chance to win the culture. The whole thing was called Japan. You cannot do that because it's gambling. Okay? But of course, it says we never charge anything extra. It's still the same thing. It says no, it's still a game of chance. It's still a chance. People come to you and you get profit out of it. Okay? So now, why AMLA becomes so difficult to enforce? It's because criminal prosecution is difficult. Okay? Now, how do I empower AMLA to be stronger than any other criminal provisions? Okay? I give them preventive measures. I give the law enforcement agencies steps that they can take to prevent something from happening. Now, there's always a problem with law when you give someone actually powers to carry out preventive measures. It's actually very difficult. Have you heard of things like So Smart? Have you heard of things like ISA? Right? So, for those who study law and for those who read the newspaper, you find that these are actually acts which are very dubious and very questionable. Why? Because it tends to punish you even before you find them guilty. Okay? So the same thing is with this type of overreaching provisions in law. Overreaching provisions in law actually introduce preventive measures. And just like AMLA, they are preventive measures. Okay? So this is how you make a provision of law strong enough even before the due process. Okay? Now let's look at AMLA. Okay? AMLA is actually to implement countermeasures through reporting institutions. Okay? So Every institution, later I'll show you what are the reporting institutions. Of course, trust companies like Pacific Trustee is a reporting institution. Banks are a reporting institution. Other financial, even lawyers are a reporting institution. Okay? Now, introduce predicate offences. So what are predicate offences? Predicate offences are figments of offences that forms a more serious offence. So it's actually small offences that contributes to a larger offence. Okay. The right to seize and forfeit to LEAs. Now, this is a very strong provision. LEAs are law enforcement agencies. How many LEAs are there in AMLA? In total, what's an example of an LEA?
SJK,
SGK. SGK stands for?
CCI, Jabatan Siasatan Jenayah Keuangan.
Oh, okay, so PDRM. PDRM, Police Direct Malaysia. Okay? PDRM, LHDN, Custom. Okay? My friend always joke, so he's from the police, so he says custom are police yang tak menjadi. Okay? So they happen to be custom. So if you are familiar with Chinese, you always say, hey, this is police law. So okay? Let's move on. Okay, so what are LEAs, law enforcement agencies? So what's the policy behind AMLA 2001? If you understand the policy behind AMLA, you are able to interpret the provisions more accurately. So the policies is the overarching idea behind the entire legislation. So here, the policy is to mitigate the adverse effect of criminal economic activities and to promote the integrity and stability of financial institutions. Seems to be very big, okay? But the whole thing is to render anything possible. Okay? So if I were to summarize this, is to render anything possible under AMLA. Okay? Now, before that, okay? What makes AMLA successful? Today, we know that every time something happens, we blame AMLA. Oh, AMLA did that. It froze my friend's bank account. Every time something small happened, immediately you have an action. Okay? What makes AMLA so potent? What do you think is the one introduction that is given to AMLA that makes it stronger than other provisions?
That this LEA has the authority to confiscate or reasonable
Okay,
as
now.
long as
Alright. So what you say is powers granted to LEA. But when powers are granted to LEA means LEA has put a microscope on your action. That means the LEA has already started to look at it through magnifying glass. Okay, so that means they have already started to focus on the activity. That's not good enough. We want something that is so wide that it focuses on all activities. It captures every possible scenario that has happened. Imagine if today PDRM can access all CCTVs and they tell you any CCTV that you install in a private place, let's say you own a restaurant, you put a CCTV in your restaurant. We don't talk about the toilet, we don't talk about your bedroom, we just talk about the private, the public place, the restaurant, the dining area. If PDRM says anyone who installs CCTV needs to be connected to our system, guess what will happen? Malaysia will be a safer place. Okay? Why? Why? Why do you think that will happen? Why do you think doing that will actually make PDRM more effective? Any idea? Evidence are everywhere. Everyone become cautious. Why? Anything that I do, I know you're able to track me. I know you're able to trace me. Okay? So, what AMLA has done is AMLA has given the authorities ears, nose, and eyes through
almost all financial activities. So if I give ears, eyes, and nose to almost all financial action, I don't care whether you're doing something which is legal or illegal, I just give you ears. I reach out everywhere. Every of your movement is tracked. So this is actually the linchpin of AMLA. The linchpin of AMLA is to make reporting institutions obligated. Now you are my ears, now you are my eyes, now you are my nose. Tell me, every time you see something suspicious, tell me. If you don't tell me, you are in the wrong. Not only I'll catch that person, now you are in the wrong. Your licenses will be affected. So reporting institution now has got a very heavy burden. Reporting institutions now will have to bear more compliance costs. Okay? So I think it depends on how a company is organized, but generally, compliance cost is more expensive than operation cost. Okay, I'm sure in many places in Malaysia you come across operation cost is actually higher. Actually, it shouldn't be. Compliance cost is the highest. It should even be higher than operation. Okay, why? Because this is to protect. Okay, but now does it make sense for compliance cost to be so high? Okay, I'll talk about this later. Does it make sense, or is it counteractive? Is it going to spoil the entire financial institution? Because if you are going to make something so expensive, people will look for alternative. They won't use the financial institution. Okay? Now, we'll talk about this later, but this is just a point to ponder. Okay? So, now, Section 3. What are unlawful activities? Section 3 of AMLA says, any activity that constitutes any serious offense, or any foreign serious offense. So, it might not be an offense in Malaysia, it's an offense overseas. Itself is also something that will be part of the AMLA. Any activity which is of such a nature or occurs in such circumstances that it results or leads to a commission of any serious offense or any foreign serious offense. Okay? It leads to, hasn't happened. Okay? And it might not be an offense here, it's an offense in another country. The term serious offense can be found in second schedule. Okay? So basically, many things are considered serious offense. Okay? So, AMLA, again, what they have done is, they put a very wide label on what can amount to unlawful activity. Okay? So, now, let's look into stages of money laundering. Money laundering always have this thing, which are divided into 3 parts. So these 3 parts is placement, layering, and integration. Placement is when you put money into the financial system. That means you put something into the ecosystem. And sometimes in placement, we do this thing called structuring. Okay? Structuring. What do you think structuring stands for? In placement.
How are we going to allocate funds?
How are you going to allocate the funds? Good idea. Good idea. Structuring. Structuring comes from CDR. What is CDR? Those that are in compliance. What's CDR? Cash threshold report. Yeah, cash threshold report. Now, sometimes certain institutions have a cash threshold report. Some banks have a cash threshold report. Okay. If I'm doing structuring, I will try to keep a transaction below the CTR. So if the CTR is 25,000, my action will always be 23,000, 24,000. Okay. So I know I'm going to trigger certain alerts. So what I do is, I place it just below. So nowadays, all your AML tools are able to catch all these structuring efforts. Okay? So when it comes to placement, AML tools are able to catch instances of how placements are done, how layering are done, how integration is done. So So at every one step of money laundering process, AML tools can catch you. Okay, so all you need to do is just set the right parameters. So most of the AML tools out there, they already have all these markers ready for you. So you just need to set the correct parameters. You actually capture what you need to capture. Okay, so what is placement? Placement is where you put deposits, you wire transfer, okay? You put money into banks, you put money into casinos, you put money into shops, you put money into offshore companies. So this is how you do placement. You take the illicit money, you start putting it into the system. Now, it's not only good that you put into the system. Why? Because the trail is there. Now, I got to blur the trail. I got to make it not detectable. So what is the whole idea behind money laundering? The whole idea behind money laundering is not to enrich someone. But we always think, oh, money laundering, enrich, we think Najib become rich, money laundering. That's one way. Okay? Another way of money laundering is to make sure you can spend illicit money without being traced. You can buy property without being traced. So if I am a money launderer, I'm not interested in holding the money in my name. If I'm going to do something bad, I'm not going to hold it in my name. Okay? So the whole idea is not to make me the richest man in Malaysia or make me the richest man in the world. The whole idea of money laundering is to make sure I can spend money. I can use it for whatever illegal purpose I need to use it for. If I need to bribe some official, I can use it from these funds and without being caught. Okay? So this is the whole idea of money laundering. Okay? But what is secondary is what people think most common. Oh, the fellow drives a Bentley, money laundering. Okay? You are probably surprised that the biggest money launderer actually drives a Wira or Wajah. Okay? So now let's look into the whole process, layering. So carrying out numerous transactions to disguise original source. So if I'm going to do money laundering, I would have a few layers, a few companies, and these companies I try not to make it related to one another. I will increase the number of transactions, okay? And I try to make it appear legitimate by adding even more layers, okay? And if I want to money launder, I need to know what are the common AML checks, what are the common AML red flags. So I need to avoid all these red flags. Okay? Like for instance, I told you that a sudden spike in volume of transaction, okay, that is actually a red flag. Okay? Unique customers. If I don't have enough unique customers, then I have a huge volume, I have a huge turnover. That is again another red flag. Okay? So the whole idea behind a successful money laundering scheme is consistency, big volume, and a track record. Sounds almost like a legitimate business, right? So that is what they try to force you to do. Do legitimate business, don't go there. Because for you to actually launder money, you got to appear legitimate. How to appear legitimate is actually to be legitimate. Then it takes away all the purposes of money laundering. Okay? So now, but it's still possible to carry it out. It just has to be a little bit more sophisticated. Okay? Now, integration, absorbing original sum into the legal economy, money turned back to a legal tender, okay, through high value purchase, luxury goods or residential property. Purchasing property is the best way to launder money. Okay? Whatever property, whatever form, assets. Okay? Now, if I want to go to Australia and I want to carry 500,000, is it possible? 500,000 in cash or in digital assets is not possible. Okay? But 500,000 in, I want something physical. Why? Because I'm not comfortable having something digital. I want something physical. It's still possible. I take something that can easily be converted. What if I purchase a Rolex watch and I enter Australia and I pawn my Rolex watch? Do I now have that 500,000 or 250,000 in Australia? Yeah, that's one. Another way that people launder money to bring in without being put to check is through high value art. or antique. High value art or antique, they have a market. So I can easily convert it to cash if necessary. Okay? So these are different methods where we do placement, layering, and integration. Okay? So the whole idea behind a successful money laundering, most important, is this part, layering. Okay? But you have to be careful about placement because placement tracks back to the original source. So you have to be a little bit careful with placement. Okay? So how to make that line so difficult that you cannot detect in a placement? You have got many small transactions. The more small transactions that you have, the harder it is. That's why you have restaurant business. Okay, small transactions. Okay, but again, restaurant business is a little bit dubious. If you're going to report to LHDN, I make clean 30,000 every month, and LHDN comes to your shop and your shop is empty. Oh, just today, because cockroaches are coming out from the sewage. So tomorrow will probably be better. If they come tomorrow, again it's empty. They come the next day, it's empty. Right? So again, how are you going to answer where your money comes in? Okay? So sometimes it's difficult when they come and spring surprise checks. So the modern way of doing money laundering is take away placement. I'm just going to take away placement. I'm not going to deal with placement areas. Then how is the money going to enter the system? Use existing money in the system, but still money laundering. Okay? I deal with it through loans. I'm going to launder through loans. Sounds very funny. How do I launder through loans? Okay? So that means public bank helps me to launder money and deal with payback. Sounds a little bit weird. Banks helping you to launder money, but it's possible. All I need to do is create a credit, okay? And with this credit, I spend the credit, okay? But along the way, what I do is I pay back my loan account, okay? So, but then I avoid the trigger of big cash transaction. If I want to make a cash transaction, I make myself able to get a loan and pay back the loan, okay? I use that money that I borrowed to make a big cash transaction, and I'm going to say, look, I borrowed money. Okay, I borrowed money. I didn't just pluck it from her. But what I do, what is not so obvious is I'm able to pay back. But I do it over a period of time. Okay, so it becomes even more complicated depending on the amount that I want to spend. Okay, if the amount I want to spend is 200,000, it's quite easy. 300,000 is quite easy. But if I want to spend 4 million, 5 million, my ability to get a loan, my ability to pay back, even my ability to pay back, where to get the money from. So it's easier to show I'm able to pay back the loan with 30,000, 40,000 monthly repayment, rather than really come out with 4 million or 5 million. So that in that way, I take away placement. I straight move on to second and third step. Okay? Actually, second and third step also becomes very difficult. It's because you avoided placement. Okay? So every AML check, what you do is the moment they sense something that's happening, they try to go back. But sometimes we become too obsessed with conventional thinking that every money laundering process needs to have 3 components. But if I take away one component, you become confused and you think it's legitimate. Okay, so let's move on. Next. Okay, United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. So 2 to 5% of the global GDP is laundered. Okay, 2 to 5%. So which amounts to 754 billion or 2 trillion. Sounds small. Okay, what's the compliance market? The compliance market is bigger than this. Now, why do you need to have a compliance market that is bigger than what is actually laundered? Sounds to be counterintuitive, right? Right. So imagine if you hire a maid, you hire someone to clean your restaurant, okay? But if your restaurant is dirty and you get a fine, the fine is actually lower than your maid fees, right? So doesn't make sense. So why? Why is it still worthwhile to spend that money on compliance if the effect of it is so small? So let's turn the question another way around. Let's ask ourselves the converse. What if there is no compliance? This amount is kept small because of compliance. If there's no compliance, it might be 3 trillion, 4 trillion, 5 trillion, 1. Number 2, you would have a corrupt system and a framework that is so brittle that it cannot sustain anything legitimate. So the whole idea about compliance is containment. Compliance is not supposed to be a be-all and end-all. Okay? So therefore, why do we need compliance? Because compliance is also preventive in nature. Okay? So what we see is something that has happened. But what we don't see is what it has prevented. Because something that has never happened, you don't return figures and statistics. Okay? Okay? So I hope that makes sense of why compliance is necessary, although it's costly. Okay? And the other thing is, if it's so costly, why would someone use it? Okay? Someone would use it because I want to be legitimate. If I'm dealing with clean money, I do not want to be implicated with dirty money. Okay? So if I'm a proper businessman, and you say you're going to pass me some money and you'll pass me cash, I'll say, no cash. Please go to the bank, because if your origins of funds is dubious, your source of funds is dubious, you will get flagged down, I will not be implicated. Okay? So it starts to make an entire legitimate business ring fence. So the whole idea is ring fencing what is legitimate from what is illegitimate. Okay? So if you are proper, you do not want to be mixed with the improper. Okay? Okay, now let's look at this. Okay? So this is the idea shown in visual. So this is where the money comes in, and this building is likely the bank, and these are the process of layering, where I do as many transactions as possible, and integration when it goes back to the economy to be used as legitimate funds. Okay, it may be used to purchase property, it may be used for consumption, it may be used to pay credit card, whatever. Okay, so money laundering doesn't always happen in 3 phases. Okay, many fraud and other crimes have gone cashless. Just like they have in the legal economy, the proceeds from cashless crime do not need to be placed or integrated. So if I am not using cash, I do not need integration at all. Okay, I do not have to turn it into a legitimate asset. Okay, okay. So one thing about all this, it makes me wonder, because I was watching drug lords in Mexico, Central America, and I was looking at all these gangsters in Hong Kong. Their operation seems to be very different, the way they operate. Okay? In Hong Kong, Korea, Taiwan, if you are a very successful gangster, you make a lot of illicit money, you go to a legal business. Okay? So you sit as a director of public listed company and all that, you appear more legitimate than legitimate. Okay? But when you look at the Mexicans and you look at all those people from Central America, they are the front to show you I am the king here. Okay? So they don't even feel they need to go legitimate. They feel that they can tell you, look, I'm here, I'm running this thing, I don't mind. Okay? So the whole idea is quite different. Okay? Let's move on. Okay? Now, how does money laundering ties down to terrorism financing? Terrorism financing sometimes is not given as much focus as it needs to, but the whole structure behind terrorism financing and money laundering is quite similar. So one of the similarities, the first part is actually avoid detection. Here, money laundering is money that is illicit. There, terrorist financing, the fundraising could be from a proper source, legal source. Okay? Then you retain control. Even through layering, you cannot lose control. You lose control of the money. Okay? So movement and storing of funds and use of funds. Okay? Integration is also use of funds. Okay? So protect the identity of key individuals. The whole idea is this in money laundering. key individuals mustn't be exposed, but key individuals can actually benefit from the use of this money. Okay, so terrorism financing or money laundering, the whole idea is keep the bosses out from the picture. Okay, not only you ring fence it, you actually protect your boss. So key individuals must be protected. If not, you lose your head. Okay, so case study. Let's look into money laundering in action. Look at it. Take probably 5 minutes. I want you to think what would likely be the red flags. What would likely be a modus operandi? Okay. What would trigger or what would make you ask more questions in a scenario like this? Okay. Take a while and have a look at this. Are we good to go? Usually when someone's preparing financial statements, the one that will question you will be your internal audit, if they dare to question you, if you are the boss of this company. Most of the time you control your internal audit, so your internal audit don't dare to question you. The one that will question you will be your accountant, the one that questions you will be your auditor. Okay? Now, in the past, we always say we can always smell the auditor from a mile away. So when they come, it's always they carry a laptop, a backpack, and they move in a group of 3 or 4, and they're usually in their late 20s, early 30s. Okay? Because at that level, mostly they do auditors work. So very likely, this explanation came because they were questioned why you do this. Okay, so they come up with a reason, because if you are not able to tell the auditor a plausible reason, your auditor will not sign off. So if your auditor doesn't sign off, then you get queried. Okay, now, so during the course of preparing financial statement for an independent agricultural machinery vendor, the client explained they were experiencing a reduction in sales and profit and decided to enter second-hand machinery market. So very likely, their initial business is brand new machine. So they want to venture into the second-hand machinery market. Okay? Like we always say, when someone tells you something, what do? When someone tells you something, you verify, right? Don't trust, we always say don't trust or verify. Okay? So in this situation, so there's the story that look, sales and profit is dipping. So therefore we are trying this. So if you're a leader, what is the first thing you do? Is it true? You give me this story, so your story must match. Okay? basically I always have this mantra. If someone tells you a story without you asking for it, okay, they are mostly building up a case for them to make something later. But if someone just keep quiet, doesn't say anything, very likely that person is an honest person. Okay? Because you always build up something to preempt something. Okay? Unless that person is being chased by a long day, immediately the person come and make up a story on the spot. Okay? So, say they are having